What's up everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name's Lauren, and thank you so much for clicking on today's video. I'm going to be sharing with you guys my labor and delivery experience. It was a little unusual, and that's why I thought this would be a good idea to put this out there. So just in case that you have a similar experience, or that you are pregnant now, or thinking about becoming pregnant, and I don't think that it's well talked about. I'm going to be doing a full video later on about my pregnancy. If you want to see that video, please like this video and also subscribe so that way you can be updated when I upload that next video. And I hope it's okay, I'm going to be doing my makeup while talking about it just because I do better if I'm doing something while having a conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and start from the beginning, and I'm just going to also go in with my concealer. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and start from the beginning. I was 40 weeks and 2 days, and they go in and they do this thing and strip your membrane, and that's kind of what they do to agitate your uterus so that way you can progress into labor. I went in the day before and I got that done, and then I really didn't think that it was going to make me go into labor. I was very discouraged at this point because I already had a induction scheduled. And an induction is when you go in and you get Pitocin given to you so that way your labor can progress faster. I really didn't want to do this because I heard that when you have Pitocin, it can make your labor a lot harder. But a lot of people that are first-time moms, or if this is your first time having a baby, it's like very common that you might have to get Pitocin. They had my induction scheduled for just a couple days, so I was really discouraged at this point. I thought that I wasn't going to progress naturally and I was gonna have to go and get Pitocin. But then I was actually in the car and I had thought, which is kind of common, I had thought that I might have peed a little bit. This really might be TMI, but when you're pregnant, sometimes you might pee or whatever. And I kind of sat up and my entire seat was covered in like liquid. At the time I didn't know what it was. I went to the bathroom. When I went in there, and this is kind of why, a big reason why I wanted to tell my labor story, is because so I went to the bathroom and obviously like I felt like I was leaking, but it wasn't clear. This is kind of when I freaked out, because if you don't know, while you're pregnant, there's a thing called meconium, and that is when your baby will actually go to the bathroom while in the uterus, and it's a sign that your baby is in distress. So they'll actually go to the bathroom, and that's why your liquid won't be clear. Luckily at this time, like we kind of knew what it was, so we rushed to the hospital, obviously like very scared. And we got to the hospital and we went up to the ER, and we had been there previously before because around I think 36 weeks I had went into the ER thinking that I was in labor. I was actually just having contractions due to dehydration. So if you are pregnant during the summer, just make sure that you are drinking a lot of water and just staying inside, especially if you live in the South like I do, because it can cause you to have contractions. So we had been there before, and at least at our hospital, if you are past a certain amount of weeks pregnant, they will like immediately take you up to the labor and delivery floor. At labor and delivery, I don't know what it was about this night. I guess everyone and their mother decided to give birth because it was very full. So we went up and we told them that there was meconium in the liquid, and that usually, you know, means that, you know, you're in a hurry. But at the same time, like, I wasn't really showing major signs of labor. I wasn't agonizing pain. I was walking around talking fine. Like, they could tell that I wasn't very progressed at that point, so they didn't seem too concerned, which really concerned me, especially because I thought that it was a very concerning situation. So at this point, I wait 2 hours to get into a room. By that time, you know, my contractions really started to pick up. You change gown into their gown and they hook you up to the heart rate machine for you and your baby. So when they hooked me up to the monitor, I was totally fine. I think at that point they checked me to see how far dilated I am. And if you don't know, you have to be 10 centimeters to give birth. And I think at the time I was either 2 or 1 centimeter. So I wasn't very far along, but I definitely was having contractions. And I was not past my due date at this point, but far enough along that I could easily give birth with no problem. Everything's fine. And then at that point, my son's heart rate starts dropping. You know, when you're in a lot of pain too, stress can cause your baby to go into distress. At this time, my contractions did start to kick in and they were getting very severe, so I asked for an epidural. And I did know going in ahead of time that I was gonna get an epidural. So that plan was already in motion, and I will be talking about my epidural experience later on. They issue me an epidural. It takes a little bit for the person to come in. At this point, my pain is so bad that I start throwing up. I was like shaking really bad. I was really nervous that the anesthesiologist was going to like mess up where he pricked me because I was shaking so much. But it went in fine, no problem. When it first got administered, I could tell right away that it was numbing more half of my body than both my legs. The right was numb and then my left was not numb. At that point, they kind of just let me try to sleep to progress longer. They kept coming in randomly because my son's heart rate would drop, and so they would rush in. They would move me from like side to side, so they kept having to turn me onto my side, which was really fun, especially when you have half of you numb. So that's an experience. At this point, you know, I really just wanted to sleep. I was very tired. Finally, it became more morning because I think finally when we got a room, it was around 2 a.m. and then they switched nurses around 4 or 5, I think. So around 4 or 5, we actually got a new nurse, and this was when my son's heart rate would drop drastically. So she would have to come in and constantly switch me from side to side to a whole bunch of different positions, which, like I said, was fun. For some reason, I realized I was thinking back, they don't really check you often, or at least they didn't check me often, so I really didn't know how far dilated I was at this point. This nurse was kind of like on the ball. She kept moving me. She was really trying to get progress. She kind of wanted to give me Pitocin, but I denied that because, like I said, I didn't want to take any of that. Like, I was already progressing naturally. It was just that I was in so much pain and my baby was under distress, so the doctor kind of wanted to just get him out as soon as possible. But like I said, like, I kind of took that into my own hands and decided not to go ahead and do that. So after they decided that I was progressing naturally, finally in the morning she checks, and it was like really quick. I felt like 1 second she was like, oh yeah, you're still 2 centimeters, and the next second she was like, okay, you want to practice pushing, because you're very close to being ready to go. So I was like, okay, cool, I want to practice. At that point I did a couple of practice pushes and it was going fine. And then all of a sudden I was like, no, like, I really just want to keep pushing. Like, I'm done with this. I want to keep pushing. I'm good. Let's go. And so I did, and I pushed for probably like 15 minutes, and boop, a little head came out. A new mom. I kind of freaked out because I think we both kind of, the nurse and I, because this was not my doctor, this was a nurse, the nurse and I kind of weren't prepared for him to actually come out. I think her and I were both thinking, you know, I'm a new mom. It usually takes women, especially with their first child, some time to push out the baby. It takes more than 15 minutes. And he actually had his umbilical cord wrapped around his neck. I couldn't see, so she was like, oh, her eyes got big, like, oh, and I was freaking out. I was like, what do I do? Do I keep pushing or what? And she was just kind of like holding his head there, and immediately, like, out of nowhere, a doctor flew in like so quickly, and she was like, whoop, let me come in. She's quickly just snipped the cord around his neck. It was just wrapped around one time, I'm pretty sure. Then I proceeded to push for probably 3 more pushes or something like that, and he was out ready to be born. The hospital that I gave birth in was actually a teaching hospital, which made them big advocates for skin to skin and things like that. So the moment that my son was born, he was actually placed immediately onto my chest. After he was placed onto my chest, I finished birthing my placenta. They stitched up whatever they had to do. And then from that point, they kind of left me alone. They took my son for about 5 minutes in the same room to weigh him, kind of clean him off and like suction out of his nose or just check him, and then they just gave him right back to me. From that moment, we stayed in that room for about a couple more hours, and then I was moved to the delivery room. And from that time, like I said, I was really lucky to be at a hospital that really didn't interfere with what you were doing. They kind of just let you do whatever you want. They came in, checked on you constantly, but they never took my son like away from me or anything. And that's what I really love, because I think that it would have been really hard, and I was able to really connect with my son because he wasn't taken away from me. We stayed in there for about 24 hours, and at that time they do all of his testing, so his hearing test and a bunch of other things, just to make sure that he's generally healthy. After 24 hours, you're basically able to go. At my hospital, we were allowed to have 2 other people in the room. I only had my boyfriend in there when my son was born. And kind of what I wanted to mention later on was my epidural. I did choose ahead of time that I was gonna have an epidural. That choice based on the fact that this was my first pregnancy. I've heard that it's extremely painful. I just chose myself to have an epidural. I think that's a personal choice. I just want to let you know my experience with it now. My son's about 5 months old, and still in that area I will feel like pressure or pain on, or especially on that one side of my body. It really did help during my delivery though. It wasn't extremely painful. I could still feel because only half of my body was numb. If I ever chose to have another baby and give birth, I would think I would still choose to have an epidural, even though there are side effects that can happen later on. Some people say that when you get an epidural, it might be harder for you to recover. That wasn't really my case. I had a great recovery. I was really sick during my pregnancy, and like I said, I'm gonna be doing a video on my pregnancy later on. So I believe since I was so sick during my pregnancy, I really didn't mind the recovery. The recovery was nothing compared to being pregnant. everyone, thank you so much for watching today's video on my labor and delivery story. If you guys have any similar experience to me, or if you have any questions, please leave a comment down below. And also, if you like this video, please like and subscribe to my channel, and make sure you guys hit that bell notification to be notified every time that I post a new video. And I will see you guys next time.